you all for coming. Welcome to this talk on Ayurveda. So a little bit about the group. This is organized by Sarvodaya at Stanford University, and our goal is to grow in service. So we like to get into acts that help society only because it helps us, as we are also a part of society. So and this is a very special talk because this is an opportunity for us to learn from an ancient tradition and see what's the science behind India's contribution to the world through the form of Ayurveda, and see if we can learn anything from it and bring it to our contemporary understanding of science. So I'll introduce our main speaker in a moment, but just to get the most out of the talk, we've also invited two panelists. One of our panelists is a little delayed, but hopefully he'll join us. So we have Dr. Charles Barrett, who is on his way. He's a doctor of obstetrics and gynecology, and he has 3 decades of practice experience. And since 2007, he's the medical director of patient safety, and he's also the chief of OB-GYN at the El Camino Hospital. The second panelist is Professor Ron Howard, sitting here. Professor Howard is also my advisor, and I will give a personal introduction to him. So he's the founder of the field of decision analysis, but the reason I have invited him to this talk is because he asks really good questions. and so I'm hoping that through his questions we'll also get a much deeper understanding of Ayurveda. With that, I'd like to introduce our speaker. So Shunya ji, she's known. I believe, are you 9th generation healer?
Not the 9th generation healer, but yeah, in the tradition.
In that tradition, for a long time in our family, they've been practicing Ayurveda. And when I first met her, this was in 2004 or so. There are very few people I know who I attend a talk and I still remember everything she said with a great deal of clarity and authenticity. So I was very impressed. Then bumped into her couple, I think it was last year again. We found that she has a school in Ayurveda in Berkeley, and so my wife got enrolled in that school, and I kept hearing all these stories, pretty incredible wisdom in this science. And we felt that okay, we have to arrange a talk, and we have to learn from the Stanford community what this has to offer us. So that's my little personal introduction. She's the director and the founder of Vedika Global in Berkeley. And her aim is to spread Ayurveda not just to select populations, but to bring it to the masses. So, welcome. I just finished introducing you.
Oh, you did?
I did. So our second.
Did you say the truth?
I think so. So with that, I'd like to call upon our speaker tonight, Shunya Pratichi Mathur. Thank you. And she will also introduce the dinner, which will begin sometime around 7:20. So that's also coming up. And the way this will work is we will bring the food in, because that's also part of the experience of this talk, and we'll eat together in here. Thank you. I don't think that works. This is the one that's set up.
And try to take as little time between you and your food. I know how it is on a Friday evening. It's my honor to be here. Thank you, Swami. Thank you, panelists. Well, I was born in India. I wear a sari, and I always begin a talk with a prayer. So please join me in my belief system. Thank you. This prayer is actually a non-Hindu prayer. It is a universal prayer that is asking that all beings who are in dialogue understand harmoniously each other's honest and downright humanitarian intentions, because at the end of the day, we all want to be free of pain, physical, mental, spiritual, social, existential. And so can we dialogue? Can we remain open? Can we remain supportive of each other? Sena Vavatu Sahana Manaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace, Peace, Peace. The desire to be happy, the desire to make another happy, the desire to lead a fulfilled life, which is biologically sound, psychologically calm, spiritually, which was a dimension that was always acknowledged and never questioned in the Indian subcontinent and Asia and good parts of the Western world till a certain time. There was this desire that ultimately happiness cannot be compartmentalized but has to be whole. And for this wholeness, this completeness, medical science was designed, nurtured, encoded, preserved in India, and this science is alive. It is alive today in India and spreading globally. That is why I am here. Even if you are here because you are curious, even if you are here because someone kind of guilt tripped you into being here, even if you are here because you came here to do something else and you bumped into Somik and you felt like you should be here, either which way, Ayurveda is here and you hear about it, and it's a great way to come to a responsible lecture created by a responsible group where some ambassador who has been doing some work for it can talk to you about it. Because nowadays in the world of modern media and almost like information from every end, there can be all sorts of opinions created around alternative medicine, which can range from blind, romantic, sentimental worshipping of a system or to downright, denial and trivialization or witch hunting of a system. But the reality is that the spark to heal, the spark to serve, the spark to make sound the human body and mind was not just a spark that we can dedicate to one God bless human being, Hippocrates, but this has been a desire for humanity in all cultures all along in every century of our existence. And because the Asian cultures, especially India, is a very, very traditional culture, we have medical books, not just oral information, that goes back to 1 AD, and some even deeper than that, longer than that. And these books have been translated in at least 5 important languages. The work is going on with the help of Government of India and memorandums of understanding with different governments. It's a governmental project, and these books are being taught in universities. And Ayurveda is not just a massage course or a let me feel good hippie course or a new age, let me swing a pendulum and decide how you're feeling, let me read the aura, but it is a proper medical science where a graduate of Ayurvedic medicine, just a graduate, requires 5.5 years of daily study, like any other medical science. If you decide to do MS or MD afterwards, that is another 3 years, and then PhD can last from 2 to 5 years. So this is the level of education that is going on in India ever since Ayurveda became institutionalized about 50 years ago, or 50 plus years when India became independent. Prior to that, it was being taught also in universities Takshashila, Nalanda, where up till 200,000 students are documented to have been studying, and libraries containing more than 200,000 books were contained, and relics and architectural evidence as well as historical records by Indian as well as international scholars who visited India, including Pythagoras, are mentioned, talking about universities in India and Ayurvedic education, education mathematics, education in science and culture of that time. So Ayurveda lives from ancient traditions to tradition till today. And as of today, 30 universities in India are giving full-time courses through which an entrance exam qualifies students to study that. And then there are people like me who have very clear evidence of 3 generations of serving the population with Ayurveda, and then anecdotal evidence of almost 9 generations of people involved in healing and health. So I stand here on this footing. I stand here to dismiss some cobweb versions and ask and enthuse you and support you in opening your hearts and minds to imagine and perhaps acknowledge that if not the same science which supports and makes the conventional system of medicine an excellent system to support our needs as of today, including myself, who benefited from an antibiotic when I had a teeth inflammation because I didn't have any other resource but to take that. But at the same time, when I developed asthma, or I discovered that I have a genetic condition, ankylosing spondylitis, and the gene HLA-B27 was tagged and proved in a Grand Indian hospital, and there was no cure but to be put on drugs, anti-inflammatory, indomethacin, sulfasalazine, these kind of drugs. And because I have an aunt who was the head of the department in the medical school in New York in a certain department, my medical reports were flown to USA, and even the US doctors concurred with the Indian MDs. And on my insistence, I was put on conventional medicine, only to experience, unfortunately, at the tender age of 18, inability to have a whole life, a full life, complete life with these drugs, albeit they were pain relieving. Yet I was having some questionable concerns about this. And my grandfather, when I first developed the symptoms at 14 and 15, already had claimed what was going on with me Ayurvedically, recommended what I needed, and here I am without drugs, without conventional drugs, standing free and helping others. Because I had to return, because I had what is called as a healthy dose of skepticism and also a teenage rebellion from the tradition that was in my family, which was, I think, really important because I disowned Ayurveda before I owned it. So I'm not a blind follower, or just because I'm an Indian, or just because I believe in chants, and just because something worked for me, so it becomes a miracle and I write a bestseller and I force it all upon you. That is not true. I am a student of secular education. I am a product of a democratic home, which allows you to have your question marks and belief systems. I am a person who was born with the need to experience and validate personally before I can take on any other belief system. So I'm not out there shopping for a guru or trying to be a guru for you in Ayurveda. I'm here to tell you of my personal conviction that has risen from an educative experience through its study and its application in my own life. And when I am pain-free and when my asthma does not require inhalers and steroids and all of those things, and I can teach for 8 hours, 12 hours at a stretch without needing to so much as take a breath, that means, and that is power to the science of Ayurveda and yoga, which is its sister science. So, though conventional medicine saved my painful tooth when I needed it, and I bow to that. That is another human heritage. The question is not this versus that. The question is, how does Ayurveda as a science help us? Ayurveda is a Sanskrit word, and Ayurveda literally means the knowledge of life. the knowledge of everything that enhances life. It is not just a compendium of knowledge of disease. It is Ayurveda. It comes from two words, Ayush, life, a healthy, happy life, and Veda, which means knowledge. And through this science, we learn thousands of years ago, the scientists in Ayurveda were teaching us a positive lifestyle, literally with what time to get up in the morning, what time to eat, what time to sleep, what should we eat, what should we be eating, what should be our exercises, what should be our range of motions, and yes, what kind of thoughts, selfish thoughts or selfless thoughts, positive thoughts or negative thoughts, restrictive thoughts or expansive thought, well-being and auspicious thoughts for other people, or self-sabotaging and hurting thoughts for other people make for a healthy body, mind, and soul. Yes, the soul dimension is not new in Ayurveda. In fact, the human subject, the living subject, is the physical body and mind, which is made up of matter. Mind too is made up of subtle states of matter. That is why the foods we eat, the chemicals we ingest, they do affect our mind, our brain, our nervous system, our ability to process and be intelligent or non. And the soul, which is non-matter, non-tangible, cannot be evidenced, and yet it is experienced. Interestingly, back in India, there was always a healthy debate. In India, 100 Galileos, 1,000 Galileos could roam free. I want to let you know that. The scientist has been worshipped, and to have an opinion and to question has been always regarded and welcomed. So there was this whole group of philosophers and thinkers called the Charvaks who said there is no soul, who said there is but this one life, who said there is no, need to have spiritual thinking in health. There is no need to meditate. And interestingly, in the Ayurvedic textbooks of thousands of years ago, chapters and chapters are given on the evidence of the existence of the soul and why consciousness is an important aspect for healing and why the body alone cannot be healed, say, in any condition, but that the mind and psychological aspects are parallel, and that the soul and the consciousness, life, purpose, clarity, intention, all of this also has to be clarified. So the science is explaining itself all along if someone were to give it the time. 5.5 years of graduate studies, 3 years of MD, and another 2 to 5 years of PhD, and you get the answers. And I want to tell you that the MS and MD level, mostly there was a desire some 30 years ago, it was recognized that if Ayurveda is going to once again become a global medicine, like it once was in ancient times, there is historical, cultural evidence, linguistic evidence, then it has to be evidence-based. It has to have clinical trials. The world was saying, okay, you were, all right, you have all this anecdotal, emotional evidence, but how do we believe you? And so the government of India established various institutions, and I don't need to take their names, institutions like your NIH or your FDA and your hospitals and your research labs. We have all of that in India. And they started, a whole new trend of evidence-based Ayurveda was started, and 600 or so of Ayurvedic compounds and drugs that are being used began to have studies, and their toxic reports, their side effects, their benefits began to be documented. Certain researches have been done, say on Google, which was an important herb that failed here, and Ayurveda got a lot of bad press. But the reality is that any of the responses that the Indian researchers and scientists wrote back to JAMA were never published. And the reality is that if we try to study the efficacy of Tylenol in the Ayurvedic science and belief system, it will fail. Similarly, if the Ayurvedic herb Google has to be studied as per conventional and modern parameters, then the Ayurvedic science also and its do's and don'ts and protocols have to be studied. The herb Google is used in cholesterol, in extreme and advanced conditions of all kinds of Meda disorders, which means all kinds of lipid and fat-based disorders, which can be obesity, which can be cholesterol, which can be variety of diseases. Google has been used for thousands of years efficaciously in India. But before Google is used, this herb, it is commonly for a mukul. It is purified, it has biochemically changed with being cooked and mixed with certain herbs, and then it is given carefully after pre-selecting the person's readiness to receive that herb. Whereas here, the herb was given almost like a pill to everyone without being purified, without checking the parameters, the biological parameters in Ayurveda that are checked. And so it gave some rashes, and Google gives rashes, QED, and it was put aside. So what does this mean? Are we saying now that, oh, we are victims? No. What I'm saying here is that when different cultures who have different set of sciences and belief systems interact, the cultural context cannot be forgotten. And if we are to responsibly benefit from each other's human experience over thousands of years, then we have to give the time and space to understand the belief system, the science, the logic, the internal logic of why a system works. And then only can we understand why we would recommend, say, the usage of buttermilk, of which you will get a sampler in a disease like colitis or bloating in the stomach. And I have students and I have people who have vowed to its efficacy and benefited from it. Or why a green lentil called mung is an ideal lentil for detoxifying the body, and its consumption has caused, for my students in 3 months, without giving them a single even herb, say a weight loss of 30 pounds. One of the students is here. Without even trying, because this herb has a lightening effect on the body. Ayurveda has a lot of physics at its core level. You know, heating things open the biological channels in the body. Heat tends to expand things. Cold tends to contract things. So if you are feeling like you are congested and you are feeling stuffed, then we recommend drinking hot water. And somebody can say, what is this hot water? Are you a cult? Is your teacher in the sari teaching you how to drink hot water because this is your new religion? No, that could be so. That's an interesting thought. I can think about it. But the reality is that hot, anything hot, the human body is also made up of matter. And when heat is applied to matter, it expands. Do you agree? And when cold is applied on the same thing, it contracts. So similarly, we have the expansion and the contraction. Another thing is, another theory that we have is, for example, like increases like and dislikes decrease each other. This is another thing. When you are lacking calcium in the body, you are developing osteopenia, osteoporosis. The conventional medicine, the Chinese medicine, every medicine wants to give you some form of calcium. Ayurveda understands calcium and goes beyond calcium to say, yes, what are you lacking? You are lacking the denseness. You are lacking density. We call it earth kind of matter. And so to give calcium, we will give various natural sources of calcium, including, say, the daikon root. We can give you certain lentils, which are rich in calcium, which are earthy. So we don't have to make a pill out of calcium and give it to you. We have studied which are the foods that give you earth, and you will have the same benefit. So in Ayurveda, osteoporosis and osteopenia is a semi-reversible or reversible condition based upon the advancements. Now, the same principle, like increases like. So if you are wanting to put bulk in the body, we give bulking foods. If you want to lighten your body, we give you light foods. And the foods were studied. The foods were studied over thousands of years. We are talking about evidence-based medicine. Ayurveda is sometimes blamed or sometimes questioned as not having sound studies on its toxic effects, side effects. The reality is, if you open a single Ayurvedic text which has English translations, responsible English translations endorsed by important universities and the government, every drug has potential side effect when taken over the counter. Ayurvedic medicine was never meant to be a magic pill. Ayurvedic medicine is a science. It has limitations. and those limitations are understood. It has parameters. It requires a physician to endorse it, to explain when what is appropriate. So there is no claim that Ayurveda or all natural systems are without side effects. That is hogwash. That doesn't cut it. How can anything not have a side effect? Anything that can heal you if taken in an overdose. If you eat too much sugar, if you drink too much water, there are overdoses. So why not herbs? So Ayurveda makes no such claim. And Ayurvedic medicine and Ayurvedic physicians, Ayurvedic researchers, Ayurvedic teachers are explaining the usage of everything carefully. In fact, if a thin person or if a person with heat in the body, for example, acid reflux, etc., drinks a certain amount of buttermilk, it can cause thinness. So we have recommendations for every food on what you want or won't. And before we give the cholesterol reducing drug, we can try foods that are lightening, that have scraping action in the body. Honey has been known and has shown and has now been proved by evidence that honey has a scraping effect in the body and cleanse the vessels and srotas or channels of the body. And it is given successfully in case of plaque, along with mixture of some herbs or ginger juice and things like that. Now, before we try the drugs, before we even go for Ayurvedic drugs, often we try the approach with foods, and 6 times out of 10 we are successful. So even in our case, the first change is at the level of lifestyle and food. The second intervention is at the level of the Ayurvedic herbs. The third intervention is at the level of Ayurvedic surgery. Yes, thousands of years ago we were developing surgery, OB/GYN, internal medicine, psychiatry, toxicology, Agata Tantra, fully developed science of studying toxicology. And then interestingly in Ayurveda, there are, which no other medicine today claims, we have 2 sub-branches. One is for rejuvenation, which is called rasayan. If you are convalescing, if you are weak, if you are recovering, how can you be biologically optimal? How can you have the best tissues in the body? We have herbs that change the body system, the nutraceuticals, the supplements that we know today. But these supplements are as close to nature as possible, and not just eaten blindly. Okay, everybody now eat the Indian gooseberry because it has a balancing effect on all the bioforces and biotissues in the body. No, even that will have a recommendation. Because in Ayurveda, there is no cookie cutter mass approach. Every human being is customized, and if 2 people are sitting here with the same condition, their entire recommendation and prescription by the Ayurvedic physician would be night and day apart. Because in Ayurveda, you are not just your disease, but you are you with a condition. And you develop this condition because of your unique eating indiscretions or habits, your mental thoughts that are added to the potpourri of the disease, and then at the soul level perhaps we can go into the field of karma, but that would be another lecture. And so food and lifestyle level 1, herbs level 2, surgery and certain more aggressive treatments like panchakarma, which are being offered in Indian hospitals. These are at the level 3. And I just want to let you know that the Ayurvedic hospitals in India, which offer you a month to 2 months of stay and change and help, they have 2-year, 3-year waiting list. And people from all over the world where disease has failed them, where other medicines have failed them. Why would somebody with a sane mind turn to Ayurveda? I ask you that. Such a confusing, culturally layered system. The one that is disappointed and has no hope. The one that is disappointed is no longer following an ism, they just want relief. And then they get that relief at the stake of Ayurveda, and then they change. Unfortunately, they become emotional, passionate ambassadors rather than educated advocates who understand that Ayurveda too is not a magic hodgepodge, it has limitations. And everything should have limitation. And Ayurveda still today is a growing science. It is still, and in the modern world with the modern sensibility, it has had to almost go back and look at its own well-utilized versions and go through trials and research and then scientific documentation. But unfortunately, a lot of that is not necessarily shared globally, even if it is available. But the Indian government and the Indian universities are very open, and I'm very happy to say that I'm just returning from India after a global meet. Our president right now is in a global meet where doctors and institutions and research based institutions from 40 countries are sitting around the government of India wanting more aid, more help, more support in developing Ayurveda in their country. We have representatives from governments, from universities, and we also have representatives from the National Institute of Health in Bethesda sitting there. The NIH in Bethesda, through its complementary and alternative programs, is now doing whole system research in Ayurveda, in arthritis, pain management, diabetes, with various important and esteemed universities such as the Stanford in India. They're the Stanford versions in India. And these researches and studies are funded by mutual cooperation, etc. So why this interest and the desire to patent several Ayurvedic drugs such as turmeric, such as neem, and many more? Almost 200 patents filed by the Western nations for use of Ayurvedic drugs have been rejected and turned down and fought against by the government of India just in the last year and a half. The Ayurvedic pharmacopoeia and use of Ayurvedic drugs includes 3,000 plus herbs. About 1,000 of these have been clinically proven, not just by one study, one random study, but again and again, of which about 10 herbs are being now internationally hot herbs that industry is getting involved in, that biopiracy has begun over. So Ayurveda is a heritage, Ayurveda is a tradition, Ayurveda is a science. Ayurveda has talked about if you sit, a body in inertia gains heaviness. A body in movement gains lightness. So Ayurveda first and foremost declared that if you sit around too much, you will develop obesity and adipose-related, congestive-related disorders, including depression in the mind, which is a heavy state, and heaviness in the body. And if you move too much, excessive exercise, Ayurveda has said that even excessive yoga can create depletion in the body, because a body that is in movement constantly will have a more catabolic effect rather than an anabolic effect. And then there is the concept of the metabolic. So we have three forces, bioforces, called Vata, which is related to motion, Pitta, which is related to transformation through heat, and Kapha, which leads to sustenance and nurturance through biological tissues, fluids, and food. Vata, Pitta, Kapha is not a magical hodgepodge. It again is based upon the utilization of states of matter and how they affect and influence the body. We have 10 minutes left. I hope the goal of my talk here, I apologize panelists if I didn't give you enough matter to question me, but maybe through your questions I can talk more. But in this limited time, I cannot really present you the fundamentals, or I cannot present you anything except to tell you that perhaps you can find out more through me or through some resources that I can connect you to. or Somik and his wife Geeta can connect you to. And perhaps I can help you enjoy the food today, which is Ayurvedically inspired. There is khichdi. The khichdi has been mentioned by Dr. Dean Ornish, who has been talking about the heart and healing it through the natural way as one of the most beneficial food. And I have been putting this food in people who are toxic and heavy and feeling out of sorts, variety of disorders. When mung lentil and basmati rice are cooked with turmeric and some amount of natural clarified butter, cumin seeds which are digestive, carminative and spark the metabolism without overburning it, black pepper which helps in detoxifying the lungs and phlegm and opening the channels of prana, and rock salt, a kind of a salt that is very old, is available in parts of India and has not an overheating and not overly water absorbing effect but a balancing effect on the body. When you eat this food, you seem to digest it well. Because another principle of Ayurveda is you are not just what you eat. You may be feeling weak and feeling like you have deficiencies of all kinds. I'm anemic, I'm this, I'm that. You're not just what you eat. You can pop all the iron you want. There may be a point when you're no longer absorbing it. You're not just what you eat. You are what you digest. And then Ayurveda goes further and says, sorry, you're not just what you digested, but unfortunately you're also carrying what you didn't digest. You thought you eliminated everything. You thought so. But if the body, if you've been eating things that your body could not break down, could not understand, an example is the hydrogenated carbons in modern thinking. If there are things that you could not adequately break down, or perhaps you were eating and you were in such a state of panic and emotional restlessness that your body could not really digest the food, then you will create certain reactive deposits in the body, which is called it's a Sanskrit word, and these become a variety of blockages or a variety of cellularly disturbing elements at the cellular level. And many diseases begin because the body is not all clear. At that point, we feed khichdi enough to give you nutrition but not to overload your system, so that when you are hungry, you're actually metabolizing what is left over. So this is not just like, oh, you're toxic from your emotions and yes, let's get all new agey and talk about it. No, this is biological inadequate metabolic state that created within you some kind of deposits, plaques, etc. that you need to work. Dudhi is a kind of a squash called opo that is very nourishing to the tissues in the body. When eaten, it almost benefits all kinds of body. It especially has a cooling effect in the body, and we have given this squash very successfully to people who suffer from ulcers and heat and rashes and also who need nourishment without having the ability to nourish. We can say to someone, you're so thin and weak and convalescing and you have such poor muscles and you're so fatigued, you have chronic fatigue, let's just give you a syndrome now here. And what do we do with you? Let's give you vitamins that you cannot break down and they give you a stomach ache. Let's give you like meat products that make you feel like as dead as the meat. Or we could give you the squash, make a kind of a soup thing out of it, you benefit it completely and you feel like eating more. Gosh, I sound like somebody who's supporting a restaurant here. Peas. Well, peas are generally a little harder to digest, and they are, what would be their immediate benefit in this audience here? Huh? Yeah, pachak refreshing. They definitely, in this food here, I think they've been thrown in here by Geeta, my student, to just give you this tantalizing effect. Because Ayurvedic foods say, you can't just be eating medicinal food, you need to be having a love affair with your food. You need to be enjoying your food. And so we have a whole concept of foods that are rochak and pachak. They are not only tasty and hence you digest them, you like them so you digest them, but they are also just tantalizing. And it is said that when you think about the food and you want it, the job is half done. So you can't be just eating fish oil because it's healthy for you. You need to be eating food because you've fallen in love with it. There is this concept, the holistic understanding. Then there is beetroots, and beetroots are again nourishing to the system and very, very tastily made. And we have our Ayurvedic chef here, Sanjay. This is his own recipe. Thank you. It's a big hit. And then we have the buttermilk sampler, which is again creates weight loss. It removes bloating, gas. It is excellent for any kind of disorders in the colon, from hemorrhoids to bleeding ulcers to even colitis, all kinds of conditions. And we have gone to the extent in Ayurvedic hospitals of putting people on a 30-day regimen of only buttermilk, and then research has been done. These people have been followed over 10 years. There has been control groups, these kind of studies on buttermilk, and buttermilk alone has saved the day. Without needing to have steroidal intervention, without needing to have very serious drugs for the digestive tract. So there is a science. It is not just that, oh, buttermilk is good for you because it's going to heal your colon. No, when you go to college, you will be explained a science, and then as per that science, you will understand why buttermilk is great for colitis, but butter or milk may or may not be. These are two different things. Yogurt may or may not be. So it is not that we just create certain foods and we fell in love with them because we worship the cow. That is not true. It is because every food item has a very solid science behind it. And please start enjoying your food. You have a question? Can I take a question right now? Yes?
What is buttermilk?
Buttermilk is very little yogurt mixed with 4 parts water. Homemade yogurt ideally. And then mixed with 4 times water and churned for a very long time. And then mixed with certain herbs like asafoetida, cumin, and things like that. So it takes on a property. It's not yogurt. It's not yogurt alone, just a tablespoon of yogurt mixed with, like, say, a glass of water. Yes?
To get away from food for a second, go back to something you touched on. Could you briefly talk about the surgery?
Briefly talk about the surgery. Okay. All right. I'll just take another food-based question and come back to you. Yes? Any food-based question?
So is that the same as, it's not the same as American buttermilk?
Not at all. We make it ourselves and you can drink it later. Surgery was highly developed. We had a surgeon called Sushruth, and our surgery books, the surgeon himself said, I'm writing a treatise on surgery, and yet it should be the last option. And as early as 1 AD, we had done our first C-section, and it is the breech birth and all sorts of births were described, how to cut the placenta, how to remove the child. Plastic surgery, rhinoplasty, was described. Anesthesia of a certain kind was made with herbs. Suturing was done with natural fibers. All sorts of stitches have been explained. The human cadaver, as well as animals, as well as certain vegetables, were used to study the layers of the skin and how to cut human cadavers also. And not just the rhinoplasty is very interesting because a certain stitch is still in use. I'm not an expert on surgery, but this is what my reading and understanding is. And about 320 instruments have been described, which have photographs and are present today from very ancient times. And eye operations, cataract, and to name a few, were done. So then slowly with, every science responds to the history. So when the Buddhist times came, when Buddhism arose in India, it was surgery got a back it did not develop as much, it did not grow as furiously. And because the killing of the animals, the more invasive treatments were not preferred. Surgery is still practiced in India, in Ayurvedic surgery, such as for hemorrhoids, such as for dental treatments and all sorts of things, but not heart surgery, for example. And even though very advanced surgery has been described, even in India, when people need an advanced surgery, they tend to go to more of the conventional hospital and then come back to the Ayurvedic hospitals. So surgery is now not at the level to be able to compete with modern surgery. But the very fact that hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, we had described the blood and circulatory system way before Harvey. We had described the lymph systems, the lymph nodes, their presence, and how we can even do surgery at the level of replacement, grafting. And something like 70 operations of the eyes have been described, elaborate diagrams, elaborate schemas, elaborate side effects, elaborate precautions, elaborate preparation. And even today, where we are using surgery now very actively is the pre-surgery and post-surgery care of the patient. This is still being utilized tremendously. So I hope I could answer you. And if you were more interested, I would connect you to an MD in surgery or an MS in surgery to give you more advanced help. So we are now eating, and please enjoy your food, and then I think Soumik will tell us what is next, I think the panel.
This is the eat in silence and enjoy your food time, and I will tell you when the program continues in a few minutes. Just so you know what you're eating in this, to correlate with what Shunya ji said, the yellow stuff is khichdi. The khichdi, yeah, that's a mix of lentils and rice. The red stuff is beetroot, and this is peas, easy to identify. This is Oppo squash curry, the light yellow cubes. So I'm going to call back Shunya ji, and for this part of the evening, we will have questions for the next 30 minutes from our panel, which is Professor Ron Howard and Dr. Barrett. So just as a reminder, Dr. Barrett is a doctor of obstetrics and gynecology. He has over 3 decades of experience. He's right now the medical director of patient safety and the chief of obstetrics and gynecology at the El Camino Hospital. And Professor Howard has been a professor at Stanford since 1965. He's the founder of the field of decision analysis. With that, I'm going to ask Shunya ji to come, and you have your mic so you can pass between each other and ask questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just as a disclaimer, I'm not actually now the chairman of obstetrics and gynecology. That was a past event, but the truth is that I did spend 30 years in clinical practice, and I'm interested in what we're learning tonight, mostly coming from a perspective that my daughter Brittany is a student, and she has enlightened me about a number of things that she's learned. So it brought up some questions that I have. First one is a specific one. I understand that raw fruits and vegetables are not recommended, but rather that they be cooked, and I wonder what the science is behind that.
Great question. Actually, raw foods and vegetables are not recommended. Many people can benefit from it. It all depends on the state of your digestive capacity. If your digestion is, how heat helps metabolize things, and cold will prevent it from being metabolized. So when the inner heat, which we call Agni, or the entire digestive system, which is if we were to understand from modern conventional perspective, it would include the state of all the acids, enzymes, and all the entire process. We have a word for it called Agni. And when we find in a person like Brit that she's eating ordinary food that you or I may be able to digest, but she seems to have abdominal discomfort or bloating or gas, then at that point Ayurveda says, well, why don't we cook this food? Let's borrow some heat from the stove. Let's kind of partially break it down before ingesting it. Just like a baby's stomach, we won't feed the entire steak, but we will mash up the turkey or the chicken, or pre-cook it, boil it, puree it, because the baby's digestive system can handle only that. So when people have compromised digestive tracts, digestive system, at that point we recommend cooking it. But if somebody is an athlete, somebody is running, somebody is having a great digestive system, then no problem. In fact, in Ayurveda, in the system of yoga and meditation, fresh fruits and raw vegetables are recommended. So there is no one rule. It was just custom tailored for the students currently.
That's a good transition. If you will, for a minute, talk about the temperature of liquids, specifically water. Brittany has done very well with warm water and kind of looks askance at me when I think ice cold water. Can you talk a little bit about the water?
I'm also a daughter. My father doesn't have a son, I'm the daughter. And I think no matter what you do, Brittany will scowl at you. So my sympathies. But we don't recommend hot water to, again, 100% people. If people have ulcers or ulcerous conditions, acid reflux or general burning sensation, hot water would be contraindicated. But again, if people have heaviness and they've eaten a tomato and it's sitting in their stomach, then what would benefit? If we look in physics, will air benefit? Will cold benefit? Or will heat benefit? Because heat is something that is generated from within during the digestive process at a macro level, at a micro level. And so we borrow the heat from the hot water, because if we just keep drinking hot soups or hot whatever, we're also adding calories and we're taking in more nutrition than we need. So if we were going to drink water, hey, why don't we heat it, and the hot water helps. So that is why, say, if Brit wants you to lose a couple of extra pounds or not have phlegm or feel kind of light, then hot water taken a few sips at a time when needed would help.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Can you talk about lactose intolerance?
Yeah, I can. This is a very frequent and common condition that I have evidence in my practice in the United States, which is over a decade. And I have documented 90% success in helping people overcome it. Milk in itself right now is undergoing a lot of processes through feeding our cows antibiotics, or our milking animals, cows, goats, antibiotics, or giving them milk enhancing hormones, etc., etc. So the milk's nature has changed, and also many people drink the milk and assimilate it well. And many people develop lactose intolerance and are unable to digest it and develop a variety of symptoms from bloating gas to diarrhea to full-blown nausea and whatnot. Now, we found that the culprit is not the milk. The culprit is your own digestive non-capacity to break down the milk. And what we did was we started cooking the milk. It was in the thermos here, if anybody noticed I was drinking. We start cooking the milk with a certain herbs and spices. We take 1 part milk, the same milk that I've been giving you a problem, with 4 parts water, and we cook it for a long time. We take whole organic milk, we cook it for a long time till the water evaporates. And in the milk we add digestive agents like turmeric, saffron, cardamom, which have digestive enhancing abilities without destroying the milk. And then we reintroduce milk in a lactose intolerant person a few tablespoons at a time over a few days. And we find that when the milk is made more digestive, the same compromised system is able to receive it. And also the milk, by being cooked, we have all studied science and we know that when things are in motion, studied about the Brownian motion, etc., the vibration increases through the heat, and as a result something becomes lighter and also biologically more assimilated. So therefore we're not adding acid to milk, we're not adding pepper to milk, we are adding some very safe warming things that work with the milk. And we have noticed that along with that, in lactose intolerance, there has often been a history of overeating. There has been a history of eating milk in the form of fermented cheeses or milk cooked with fruits, etc. We have some science around how to eat milk and how to drink milk, and when milk is drunk in a certain way, cooked with certain spices, slowly the system is restored. So again, we heal the digestive system. I hope that was an adequate answer.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, well, first it was a very interesting talk that you gave, and I was reminded of some other things I've heard in my life that affirmed what you're talking about. One was the statement of the Buddha, and this was more about your scientific approach, that you shouldn't believe anything told to you by any authority until you confirm it yourself. Another thing I remembered was my colleague who wrote books on clinical medicine, a very distinguished doctor and scientist, who said all drugs are poisonous. The question is whether the positive effects of them outweigh the negative effects. And you said that too. Another experience I remembered was the story of the visit that Dalai Lama made to England with his doctor. And while the Dalai Lama was going through his usual visits, the doctor went to visit a hospital in England. And they said, well, do you have any special requests? He said, well, yes, I would like to have a bowl of each patient's urine outside the room before I see the patient. And he went along and he smelled this one bowl, and he said, this woman has a hole in her heart, which she did, and astounded the doctors who would have wondered how he had ever been able to diagnose such a thing. So there's lots we don't know that are in one society that are known in another. The last example was aspirin, which was discovered by the Indians and then finally developed by Bayer as a very common pain reliever. Now, I also got a call today from one of my former doctoral students telling me that he had a tumor on his pituitary. And I got to think, well, how would you deal with something like that? I mean, he didn't know he had that until he had MRIs and tests and hormone levels and so forth. And I just wondered if, I mean, he's a young man with small children, and how do I think about that in the context of Ayurvedic medicine? Because I'm sure there are people in India who have a similar ailment. So what would you recommend when someone has these? It started out with he was feeling weak and sort of lack of energy and sometimes lack of libido and so forth. And those were the symptoms, and he went, and then this was the final result of about a month of investigation.
So conditions like cancer, tumors, carcinomas,
Yeah.
multiple sclerosis, all of these advanced disorders is what lands up on our plate, and also to India, worldwide attention is being given. In Ayurveda, we have one concept which is called Swastha Rakshanam. The first thing is prevention of the cancer. And we have an understanding of the cancer that when the microchannels of the body, which are seen and not seen, get clogged by food and get clogged by negative thoughts. interrelated, mind and body. When they are in disharmony, we have to begin clearing them. And one of the preventions that we would do would be by eating some things like the moong lentil khichdi or the buttermilk. Believe it or not, these are foods that I have successfully used. I and my colleague, a successful doctor and MD here, sitting here, we have given these foods and we have prevented cancer from reoccurring. At least that I can tell you for sure. How would we treat an active cancer? So we have ourselves.
Well, by the way, I don't know if he doesn't know if this is a
For
cancer. It
example.
probably is not.
So let's just use it. Let's just talk about cancer, not just about the patient. And there is an active mass, an active growth. Then Ayurveda has we have an understanding of arbuds, growths, etc. And in Ayurveda, in our text, it has been written what are the herbs that are going to be used for it. So there is an herb called kanchinar, which is cooked, which is purified and mixed along with gugul, Comnifera mukul, and these herbs are mixed and cooked together and made into a tablet. And these are very successfully removing excessive growths from the body without having the harsh effect of chemo and radiation. Similarly, there are certain other herbs and also some metallic compounds that are used. For example, in conventional medicine today, even gold is used for arthritis, etc. And they use it in their own way. You don't ingest your chain. You make it into a compound that is homologous to the body. Similarly, we use gold, silver, diamonds, and all of these and make it homologous to the body tissues. And diamond ash cooked with herbs is used very successfully in even healing hard and difficult carcinomas and tumors successfully. And there is clinical evidence to support it. And people with incurable cancers are queuing up, lining up in India. So we would do herbal approach, we would not do surgical approach. And also in cancer, another thing Ayurvedic community is dealing a lot with is giving support during chemo and radiation. The side effects that occur during that time, increased heat, for example, or increased toxic, symptoms on the skin, etc. We give excellent support, and so a lot of that is occurring in Ayurveda alongside. So, and then we started here with meditation. At Stanford itself, I think some research has been done on meditation. You would know, I had read about it. And meditation has been found to have a relaxation benefit on the entire system, whole system. And so we also teach meditation, and we equip the system to fight better the condition. So we purify, we cleanse, and then we add herbs that allow at the micro level for the cleansing to happen. And what are our results? Are our results 100%? I'm not going to be able to tell you that. I don't have numbers right now. But I can say that yes, there is work being done on cancer very actively, and research being done on that.
Thank you. Now, the next thing is the description you gave of the treatment, which has to be very much individualized.
Yes.
In terms of the dose, not only what you're giving, but the dose and so forth. And then you also mentioned the idea of random test controls and so forth. How do you do the kind of testing that is done of drugs now, which has its own problems, which we could talk about? And I'm not so sure getting all the U.S. agencies duplicated in India is going to be any good for Indian health. But take this question of a randomized trial, which has ethical problems, among others. How can you do that if you have to be looking at the person to see whether the drug is okay for them?
That's right. So what we've had to do is we've had to meet the conventional parameters halfway. So say we are doing a test for diabetes mellitus. We would have to take certain parameters in common, like age or certain parameters will have to be common. So to reach the standardization that we want, we have had to customize, but we've had to seek a population that has similar attributes.
But that seems to fly in the face of the individualized treatment.
That is right.
Because there's nobody like you, and there's nobody like you.
That is right. So, why is this being done? This is a question. This is a question. Why are we standardizing what has been working for thousands of years? Why are we defending Ayurvedic medicine when India, in spite of being a third world, has almost better health than the United States of America? Why are 30,000 graduates of Ayurvedic medicine flooding the villages and taking care of the impoverished village population very successfully without needing intervention with antibiotics or antivirals or any of those drugs or penicillin? How is this occurring? Nobody is dying from medical toxic side effects that the FDA warns us against, and yet India is at a crossroads. Traditional medicine is a crossroads because the ruling ideology demands standardization and demands certain results, and therefore 30 to 40% of our resources are spent in creating studies that are flying in the face of what we stand on, and yet this is the historical reality of Ayurveda, that we are standing at a place against the wall saying, look, we can produce something that you can, just so that we can be able to dialogue with you. But the reality is, it is true that Ayurveda is so customized. Thank you, that's a very perceptive and insightful question. You do ask great questions in that sense. That how can we possibly create a research that can say that this works, and yet when we try to take as much parameters as we can create something so that the global dialogue can occur.
You said the ruling ideology. What did you mean by that?
When I say the ruling ideology, which includes the India too, the ruling ideology is that everything has to be evidence-based. Even meditation has to be evidence-based. Spirituality has to be evidence-based. This is the ruling ideology, or the dominating ideology, or the dominating belief system, and the secular education promotes that. Hey, even I wanted Ayurveda to be evidence-based.
But do you really? See, if you know it works, why do you care what other people know?
Why do I care? I don't care today. But when I was younger, when I was more impressionable.
But now you are who you are. Why do you care?
Why do I care?
Why don't you just heal people?
I heal people.
Good. So forget the random testing. Forget the government's desires and so forth.
Yet this knowledge has to be given, I believe. Because when I'm in my organization, I am a healer, I believe in spirituality, I will begin my teaching and end with prayer. I will do what I want to do. And yet, as an ambassador of this science, I have to give a full view. I have to take and understand and begin with a common denominator that I might be meeting a lot of impressionable people like me who still have to arrive to a certain place. So living in America, I have become trained to offer and meet people halfway, where your skepticism becomes food for my convictions. And then I can slowly bring people to that.
But I would think that if Ayurvedic medicine is practiced in India with great success, as you mentioned, in the villages and so forth, why would that not be its own evidence?
You answer me that.
Why? To the villagers? Do they seek out Ayurvedic doctors and so forth?
When we talk at a global level, when we talk at a level of an average American wanting to buy Ayurvedic drugs and the FDA issuing a warning that Ayurvedic drugs are toxic, we have to, and the Americans, the people from Netherlands, the people from Iceland, they are hearing about Ayurveda and they want it, and yet they cannot avail the systems, they cannot avail the knowledge. The doctors and healers have to not even call themselves doctors.
But that's a legal issue, right?
That is a legal issue.
Right, that's the government again.
That is why when certain clinical tests which may compromise the essence and the root of Ayurveda, and yet they somewhat do not hurt it or shake it too much, and at the same time are able to communicate to a larger global audience, which includes Indians, which includes people who are questioning and wanting evidence of a certain kind, which may or may not be met completely, but halfway, some potential of some opening can happen.
You know, to me it seems there's a spectrum in anything. I'll take religious practice. You can be a monk or an evangelist. Those are the opposite ends. You can deal with people who truly understand, but there's not many of them. As the Buddha said, there will be some who will understand. Or you can try to water down your message until everybody gets it at one level, but doesn't really understand it. And I think in any field with belief, strong belief behind, you have to make that choice.
Yeah.
And I would say what a Buddhist teacher told me, keep it crisp.
Keep it crisp, keep it authentic, keep it real. Ayurvedic medicine in the clinical trial will not be able to provide any evidence on soul and mind and what emotional mental states have a role to play, say example in diabetes mellitus, and how we respond to the different drugs. That is true. Yet this is the global trend and it has been presented.
Yeah,
And
well,
this is what is happening.
fight the tide.
Fight the tide.
Okay, I'll stop very soon, but I had one other question here. It's really a suggestion. You mentioned that somebody you're treating took off 30 pounds by eating something that was a natural product. Boy, do you have a money-making opportunity there. I mean, just think about it, right? I mean, you just have to look at television, or people will spend all kinds of money to lose weight. So if you can do it, you know, if you really have a way of getting people to lose weight by eating healthy things and not spending a lot of money, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, but I'm also inspired by Buddha and I live my truth. And my entire organization is humanitarian, not-for-profit. We're spreading the message. I have a diet created by my grandfather. Taken 7 days makes you lose 10 pounds if you don't need to have them around. And also you don't yo-yo back or regain that because it actually changes your system. There is money-making opportunity, and in Ayurveda, like in any other system, opportunism, commercialism, you know, all of these things have entered. But as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Rani, if you ask me, that is not my personal choice. So I give this to people who are trying to really transform their life. And honestly, it's not even one thing that the student did. It was she followed certain lifestyle, she ate certain foods, and she began to question her belief system, her thoughts, and started just having a better attitude in life, and that resulted in some weight loss. Can I personally, as an individual, take credit of it? I cannot. I have to give the credit back to the scientists and sages who discovered the system of Ayurveda. I am walking pain-free. I can raise my hands. I don't have deformity. Many years ago when I went to my, rheumatologist, and my rheumatologist said, your spine is improving, your flexibility is improving, your lung capacity is enhancing, what are you doing? And when I mentioned the word Ayurveda, he didn't know it, but he said, keep it up. He was so pleased. I myself am so overwhelmed and so thankful to the science. And what am I doing? I'm having better relationships. I am being more honorable as a person. And I am eating better. I'm very conscious of what I'm eating, what I'm not eating. I sleep at a certain time, I wake up at a certain time. I know my yoga protocol and I try to do good every day. I'm like, that's the religion in Ayurveda. Ayurveda has no one God. It doesn't profess being vegetarian. It doesn't ask you to have a belief system. It just asks you to be a universal being, a dharmic, noble intention being, and helping all creatures. So there's a very deep embedded spirituality, and that is why in Buddha Sanghas, in his teachings and in his brotherhood, Ayurveda was a practice, and his own, his own doctor was an Ayurvedic medic, an Ayurvedic doctor. So there is money making all the time, but what I'm making is even bigger, which is I'm spinning a lot of love and momentum, I guess.
But remember, it's not money that's the root of all evil,
No.
according to Christ. It's the love of money.
It's a
As long as you don't love it, you can use it for a good
Yeah.
purpose.
It's a resource. It's a resource. Thank you.
That's all I had. Thank you.
That was wonderful questions. Thank you for
My
that.
pleasure.
Yes.
You mentioned something about using gold and silver and diamond, diamond ash or whatever in your, along with herbs. But how sustainable is, a healing practice like that, using, precious metals that are in scarce supply?
They are not used, they are not the first choice of intervention. They are when you have an advanced condition and they are used for a short period of time. They are, and they have to be bought from a very, very authentic place and have to be, you cannot just buy it, it has to be prescribed by an Ayurvedic MD. These are all advanced drugs of Ayurveda. And only in India, not here.
I'm curious to know the science's take on meat eating.
Again, meat eating is fine. There is no moral issues around it. If you can digest the meat, if you can benefit from it, it is an excellent source of bruhana or nourishment. If you cannot eat it and if you're having indigestion and constipation, then give it a break and have some mung soup and khichdi. That's the take. Any other question? Yes, Prakash.
No, first, thank you, Shunya.
Thank you.
I have two-part, more of a info seat. Charaka Sushruta. I recall that they had developed some sort of a surgical modality as part of this. I was curious to know if you could throw some light on those aspects. The second part is, how does Ayurveda help in terms of dealing with the cases of say, broken bones, accidents, real emergency cases?
Today, the emergency cases in Ayurveda are handled by referring to the nearest OPD of the modern conventional hospital. If you're bleeding, you might as well go to an ER, But I'm very happy to tell you that bone setting, bone surgeries, and even intervention through herbs and through fumigation, etc., to stop bleeding, and many procedures were done. So, but like I mentioned before, that surgery today is not as developed as much as the disease management through internal medicine, etc. Did I answer your question?
What about the Charaka Sushruta?
Sushrut was the surgeon, and Charak has taught more of the internal medicine. So these compendiums are present in our library, and you're all welcome to come and have a look. Yes?
Are there any simple lifestyle changes that we can integrate into our lives that will lead more along the Ayurvedic practice?
Yes. I mean, Ayurveda teaches lifestyle, and it teaches a lifestyle on a scientific basis. It tells you that if you get up from this part of the morning to this part, these are the biological changes that will occur in you as per the science. If you wake up at this time and this time of the day, this will happen. So we are products of nature. There is another theory in Ayurveda, Yatha Pinda Tatha Brahmanda. As we are the individuals, so is the universe. Macrocosm and microcosm are one. Unfortunately, we are not made of cellulite or plastic, so we cannot just, invent something and have our own artificial lifestyle. So when it becomes dark, all of nature falls asleep, but we invented the light bulb and decided to stay awake and browse beginning midnight, right? So when we disturb our circadian rhythm, we are also like the sunflower or the plants and the animals following the sun. We awaken and then we fall asleep. And that is the most natural cycle. So for example, if we can definitely be fast asleep by 10 p.m. at night, we do our bodies a huge favor. And early morning, 4, 5, 6 a.m., the earlier we wake up, our entire body starts changing. That's one lifestyle change for you. Ayurveda has also mentioned we should bathe daily and we should decorate ourselves. And we should wear good clothes. So you may wonder, what is that about? Well, that's about feeling good about being on earth, having a positive attitude, because it's a pretty screwy life. If you don't bathe and walk around in your pajamas and feel miserable and have purpose, life and death questions all the time. So it talks about bathing and anointing yourself with aroma and daily bathing. That's a lifestyle. There are people who think bathing is an option, showering is an option. Well, not according to Ayurveda. Here's, and then it explains why. Another thing is it says that have your biggest meal at daytime. Why? Because we are no different from the sun. The heat in the sun powers everything. It powers the whole plant world so that they can manufacture chlorophyll, and it also has an impact upon us. When the sun comes out, everything is okay. No matter how depressed and miserable we were last night, when we see the sun, all of us feel better, don't we? We are children of the sun. And similarly, our digestion, our hunger, our thinking, our power increases because we are powered by the sun. That little bunny that's always going, right? That's when we get powered by the sun. And so if you eat your biggest meal during daytime and your lightest meal before the sun sets, that makes sense because then you've eaten while there is heat, and heat is to be cherished. Heat has to be nourished. But here we are eating like a 10 o'clock snacks. We're standing in front of the refrigerator and looking at it blankly and wondering how else can we, be more miserable, So I'm just making light of it. But the reality is, this is our life. And I've been there. Brett?
I'm just wondering, for people who are completely new to Ayurveda, could you just give a very, very brief description of the doshas?
Thank you for asking the hard one. There is no brief description. It is a core pillar. There is a concept called the doshas. Dushyanti iti dosha. These are forces in the body. These forces are energies. Matter and energy are on the same continent. Matter is what we can see. Energy is what matter becomes. And then matter once again becomes energy. We all know that. And the food we eat ultimately generates the doshas. And the doshas in turn generate us the ability to eat food, digest food, and process the food into structure. So these are bio forces. They are called vata, pitta, kapha. Everything in the body that is moving, be it a heartbeat or our thoughts, this is due to vata dosha. If it is normal, then everything will be fine. If it is abnormal, things will get speeded up or slowed down, like arrhythmia, for example, or panic disorder, for example, or movement-related, injury-related, pain, etc. And vata dosha gets aggravated by jumping, thinking too much, talking too much. There is a variety of lifestyle and food things that aggravate it. Pitta dosha is the heat, the various hormones, enzymes, acids, digestive juices at the macro level in the digestive tract or at the cellular level in the form of the heat in each nucleus of each cell. All of this together forms Pitta dosha. If it is too much, it can cause you burning, high inflammation, heat. If it is too low, then you feel cold and you're not able to digest your food or even process your thoughts properly. That means some heat. And Kapha dosha is the structure and the solidity of the body. If it is enhanced, increased by slowing down, eating heavy food, sitting around, then you will gain weight, you can gain heaviness in the mind, you can become congested, you can have, deposits in the body that you don't want. And if it is too low, you can have thinness, you can even lose the oiliness of your joints, like the synovial fluid can dry up, and clicking sounds will begin, and you will feel like you are having palpitation, you're feeling tired, you're feeling thin, you're feeling fatigued and weak, and you can say, oh, you're lacking in kapha. And kapha increases by slowing down, calming down, oiling your body, eating lubricating foods, enjoying milk and almonds, and just nourishing yourself. So there is these three doshas, and we like to balance them. I hope I was able to give you some kind of a synopsis. Yes?
You named some major Indian hospitals, that Ayurvedic hospitals in India.
Should I name them?
How can you point me to a resource that we can find list of hospitals or something?
I think I can send a list to Soumik Rao from Sarvodaya, and then he can forward it to the email list, whoever wants it. I can also forward a couple of websites where all our research and our studies, including the debates on spirituality versus science and all of that are given so that you can have some reading.
And could you also recommend a good book for novices to learn about Ayurveda and get a
For fundamental level?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. You can do that.
If we have a serious illness, how do we make the decision to go the conventional route or doing what you're talking about? How do we make that decision?
It has
Or
to
can
be,
you combine both?
often it is combined, and sometimes it cannot be combined. Sometimes it all depends. It's very case by case. I don't know how do you make a decision. I think only you will know that. But it all begins with dialoguing with someone like myself or like my colleague, or talking to an institution and starting a dialogue to evaluate your choices, pros and cons, etc. Yeah. For example, if there is some acute problem, I would think that you're better off working with your MD. But if there is a chronic condition, asthma, diabetes, weight loss, MS, chronic fatigue, things that you're not
Diabetes
mastering.
is a serious condition, and some of the things you mentioned are, so let's even take out the word really serious, but some people would say diabetes and some of these other things are serious. And it's very difficult to decide which way to go, you know. It's not that simple.
It's not that simple. That's why it's not that simple for me to answer you. Your question mark is not my question mark. Your question mark exists because you do not know enough about Ayurveda. And I need to honor, for example, I would honor that, and I would educate you first. And you may arrive at a point where you realize that even for a serious illness like diabetes, suppose in spite of taking medication or any other intervention, sugar is not being controlled or weight loss is occurring and other things, where do you, for example, along with your traditional whatever you're taking, can you include some Ayurvedic foods that help the body? Can you include some yoga postures that help the body? So it could be in pieces, parts, or wholes, and it all depends on the person's readiness and state of mind.
I don't think it needs to be one or the other, and you've said that several times.
Yes.
The things that you recommend are complementary.
Often.
You have said virtually nothing that has put down traditional medicine and say, oh, this is terrible. You're saying that there's a need for that, but you can augment the treatments, supplement the treatment, assist the treatment with the principles that you believe in and have stood the test of time.
That is very correct. In fact, I would like to tell you, Dr. Nayak, that in India, such is the appreciation of Western medicine or conventional medicine that Ayurvedic graduates have to study 2.5 years of fundamentals of allopathy, just so that they can interface with the modern knowledge. This was a decision taken by the board. And again, another question that Dr. Ron can ask, why? I asked that question, thank you, because that's my question. You know, I can ask that question. But the larger trend was understood that most people will walk in with a thyroid test, you know, a blood test, or a report of the urine, and you know, what is the uric acid. And an Ayurvedic doctor, an MD, should be able to at least read it, honor whatever they are going through, and then supplement it with diet, or yoga postures, or herbs, etc., which don't conflict too much. So yes, at least the way it is practiced in India today, there is no contradiction. And even in cancer, say somebody is having chemo, but then there is a time when the doctors say, we're sorry, we cannot give you any more radiation because it will lead to radiation poison. Now, at this point, a patient may say, okay, I am in your hands, do what you want. I want to live. And at that time, all questions dissolve and only one clear path opens up. Any other question? Yes?
I have a question about chiropractic care and Ayurveda. Are they at all compatible or just contradictory?
I don't know enough about chiropractic care. But if it is manipulation of the body to give it ease, bones, muscles, tendons, that's what I know. I don't know enough about it. I would think it would be complementary. Why would it hurt? Why would massage therapy or manipulation of the body, acupuncture, it all works. The Ayurvedic doctor should know, physician should know everything the person is going through. But sometimes we don't always know. So sometimes if a person comes to me who's taking a lot of Chinese herbs, I will not be able to know everything. And then I can say, well, let's just begin with mung, lentil and khichdi and see how you're doing. Let's just begin with hot water, because that could possibly contradict with your Chinese herbs. That's the only thing we can do to remain realistic and interface with different modalities. Any other question? Yes.
You mentioned that, like any other science, there are limitations to Ayurveda. And you also mentioned that even today there is active research in Ayurveda to expand the science. So I'm curious to know, in terms of those limitations, what today is happening in the research.
What is happening in the research?
In terms of addressing maybe the limitations.
Yeah, there are lots of limitations. For example, now the current population that comes in to avail Ayurvedic medicine are often having already somebody has hypertension, they're already taking antihypertensive drugs, etc. How do our medicines interface with them? What can be the possible biochemical reaction in the body? So that's our limitation. Another limitation is many herbs are mentioned in our pharmacopoeia which have not been identified, or which we are losing fast due to piracy, due to commercialization, exploitation. So one limitation is we are not able to either identify the herb or procure it. So we are trying to replant and regrow some of the things, or we are doing some botanical research to see if that particular herb that we possibly identify as the herb pointed out by our scientists is the one giving those results. So that's a limitation. So such things are all going on. Another limitation is, for example, in surgery, we have many practices and many drugs that have been mentioned, but the government of India is trying to reboost that sector and reopen the education. Then a lot of the literature is in very, very complex Sanskrit that even people like myself do not understand. So there is some effort to transliterate it and make it more available. So these are all the limits and limitations that we are having. Also, limitation can be in education and training of the doctors. Also, unfortunately, with very less education, people have begun to, offer or peddle Ayurveda, causing some damage. So, global popularity of Ayurveda has increased, but standardization of who is practicing, who is dispensing medicine has not been there. So the government of India right now is waking up to its need to standardize Ayurvedic education worldwide. So these are some of the things that we are dealing with.
I'll do a follow-up to his question about whether how much research is going on. It seems what you have said is more like a past glory thing. Thousands of years back they had done a lot of work, and people are using it now. But in terms of advancing it from where it was to a next stage, is there any research going on in
40
India?
years we are full of research. Every university is doing research. In fact, MD and MS in Ayurveda requires a clinical research so that we can research and revalidate. So if we are saying that turmeric is a blood purifier, okay, there are at least 400 plus research studies to prove it. If we are saying that, let us say Brahmi or Shankapushpi or Gotukola, these are herbs that are working in Alzheimer, there are about 40 plus studies in prestigious universities in India over many years proving it that it is helping with Alzheimer. So this is, what I'm saying is this is current research. This is not past glory. Past glory has just said in one sentence that you can use Brahmi for memory enhancement. That is the word, it's a code, it's a sutra, a sentence. The modern community, for good or for bad, took it up to prove it.
So the main universities are doing this research?
Banaras Hindu University, Gujarat University, Jamna University, Pune University, Delhi University and the Department of Ayush and Ayurveda Yoga Siddha Unani Department, Government of India, and then we have Central Council of Research in Ayurveda, CCRA, of which the website I'll give you, which is pumping money into validating some of the things.
So is this research mainly about finding evidence to what is already given in books, or is it also going to the next stage as well?
It is also going to the next stage. Naturally, it is a human endeavor to then take few herbs and create patent herbs or try new compounds or new, based upon the principles. The principles do not change. In the Ayurvedic science, we don't have to look for a principle for why did this disease occur. Every time a new disease occurs, say HIV or epidemics and all, swine flu, etc., we don't have to rethink the wheel of why this could have occurred. Vata, Pitta, Kapha and our basic understanding helps us explain the disease and manage it. So principles are not being discovered, new compounds, new medicines, new treatment protocols are being set into place.
Could you compare homeopathic and Ayurvedic?
Homeopathic principle is contained in Ayurveda, like increases, like dislikes, cut each other. So we are using it. Homeopathy is, again, I'm not an expert in it, but it has been a very useful and very well liked medicine.
Do people just go to an Ayurvedic practitioner just to get a general physical? I mean,
They do that in India all the time. Over here, say in America, people would come, we have a low-cost clinic through our organization, and MD doctors supervise those clinics. Any of you are welcome to come to the clinic and utilize its facility. Then you can come in for a physical, or most people come in for some intervention. They want some alternative approach to their condition. And why would they come back? Insurance is not paying for it. There is no big PR for it. They come back because they feel better. So somewhere a system can only talk about itself so long. It gives results and then people want it at a ground level. Are we closing now?
Do we
Have a
want to?
question?
What time do we want to?
Oh, when people are done, we're done.
Okay. You had a question?
I had one question, but okay.
Well, I wanted to ask, so one of the, I would say, ethical debates going on today is regarding genetically modified foods. And I'm curious to know what Ayurvedic science might have to say in that debate.
The Ayurvedic texts don't talk about genetic modification. But I think from basic theory of Ayurveda or basic fundamental spiritual principles, we would like to be as close to nature as could be. That would be my answer. I thank you both, Dr. Bayer, Dr. Ron. Thank you, Samik. I thank all of you for your patient listening. And we always end with a prayer. So again, my deepest belief in my own journey from physical health, psychological imbalances that I was somehow born with, and having a lot of mental stress and emotional ups and downs, and my soul feeling more grounded in who I am today. This journey has been from darkness to light, from untruths that I told my own self to the truth that I am and I'm worthy of health, and from disease and decay to health and wholeness. So there is a prayer, a thousands of year old prayer, which says, may my journey be from untruth to truth, darkness to light, and from ill health to health. I will sing that. Asato ma sargamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityur ma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Peace Peace Peace. The power of positive self-suggestion. That is what these chants are. When we get up and sing them in the morning, we make a new sankalpa, a new resolution to use our life, our day, and our moment to move from untruth to truth, darkness to light, and from disease to health. The power of the positive affirmation. This is what the sages and scientists of Ayurveda have been teaching us. Let us, every moment of our life, fill ourselves with positive expectations from ourselves and walk that path and never look back. And every time we turn around, we will see that others are following us. Thank you for blessing me and the science and the sages. And thank you, scientists from beautiful fields of your own. Thank you for sharing your minds and intellect with me. I feel blessed to be here. Thank you for doing a great job in Sarvodaya, Somik, and everyone.
Thank you, Shunya ji. That was a really wonderful talk and also panel discussion. It was great. I wanted to just quickly close by giving a special thank you to our wonderful chefs for today. Geet, if you can stand up, please. Kanchan as well. You guys did a wonderful job, and it's no small feat for those who have done it to cook for 60 plus people, and they pulled it off, and it was really wonderful, and I really want to thank them for that.